Welcome back, XCoinUSA. Stop scrolling and check your pocket change. That ordinary 5-cent Jefferson nickel sitting in your wallet, coin jar, or old collection could be worth far more than 5 cents. In today's video, we're revealing 5 rare Jefferson nickels that collectors are searching for in 2026, including valuable mint errors, key dates, wartime silver nickels, and high-grade coins that can bring serious money. Some Jefferson nickels have sold for thousands of dollars, while most people spend them without ever looking twice. So before you spend another nickel, check the date, mint mark, condition, and Monticello details. Stay until the end because the final coin could be the one you never expected to find. First up, the 1985 D Jefferson nickel is one of those American 5-cent coins that can look completely ordinary at first glance, yet a closer inspection can reveal details that make a major difference to collectors. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on the obverse, beside Jefferson's portrait. The 1985 D issue had a huge mintage of approximately 459,747,446 coins, so the date itself is not rare. But here is where the story becomes much more interesting. PCGS notes that while most 1985 D nickels are common, examples in very high uncirculated grades, especially those with full steps, become much scarcer. That means the real question isn't simply, do you have a 1985 D nickel? The real question is, what condition is your 1985 D nickel in? The 1985 D Jefferson nickel follows the classic Jefferson nickel design created by Felix Schlag. The coin is made from 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5 grams, measures approximately 21.2 millimeters, and has a plain edge. On the obverse, Jefferson faces left, with the date 1985 and the D mint mark nearby. Flip the coin over and you will find Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, along with the inscriptions United States of America, 5 cents, and EPLURIBUS UNUM. For collectors, however, the most important area may be much smaller, the steps beneath Monticello. Those tiny horizontal lines can determine whether an otherwise beautiful coin qualifies for the highly desirable full steps, or FS, designation. So, what is a normal 1985 D Jefferson nickel worth? If you find one in circulated condition, don't expect a fortune. Current pricing references generally place ordinary circulated examples around face value, meaning approximately 5 cents. Uncirculated examples can bring more, with values depending heavily on grade. One current market guide lists approximately $2 for MS61, $4 for MS63, and $7 for MS65, while the published auction record for a regular MS65 example is $26. These figures show why condition matters so much. A coin that spent years moving through pockets and cash registers can remain essentially a 5-cent coin, while a sharply preserved mint state example can attract collectors. Now look closely at the full steps variety. This is where the 1985 D Jefferson nickel becomes much more exciting. A full steps nickel has unusually complete and uninterrupted lines across the steps of Monticello. The reason collectors care is simple. These steps are vulnerable to weak strikes and contact marks, so finding a high-grade coin with exceptionally sharp steps is considerably more difficult. Current published guides list approximately $4 for MS61 full steps, $6 for MS63 full steps, and around $50 for MS65 full steps, although actual selling prices can vary. The same guide reports an auction record of $546 for an MS66 full steps example. And now we get to the auction records, because this is where the numbers become especially interesting. PCGS records an auction result of $546 for a 1985 D Jefferson nickel graded MS66 full steps, sold at Heritage Auctions on March 7, 2006. Another documented sale was a 1985 D MS66 Full Steps PCGS coin that brought $504 at Stack's Bowers in August 2021. In April 2022, a 1985 D MS67 Full Steps NGC example sold for $168 at Stack's Bowers. More recently, Graysheet records include a 1985 D MS66 Full Steps PCGS sale for $121 in September 2024, and another for $119 in May 2024. These results demonstrate an important lesson. Auction prices can vary widely even when coins have similar grades, because certification, eye appeal, strike quality, tunning, bidding competition, and market conditions can all influence the final price. But there is an even more impressive result to know about. Great Collections reports that a 1985 D Jefferson Nickel graded PCGS MS67 Full Steps sold for $2,643.75. Its auction archive also indicates that it has sold dozens of 1985 D Full Steps examples over the years, with realized prices ranging from only a few dollars to more than $2,600, depending on grade and quality. This is a perfect example of why you should never judge a coin's potential value simply by looking at its date. The difference between an ordinary circulated nickel and an elite certified full step specimen can be enormous. There is also an important distinction between a price guide and an auction record. A price guide is an estimate or market reference, while an auction record represents an actual completed transaction. For example, one current Graysheet listing shows a published retail figure of approximately $2,500 for an MS67 1985 D Full Steps nickel, while PCGS's auction information records individual sales at much lower or higher amounts depending on the specific coin and auction. So if someone tells you that every 1985 D nickel is worth thousands of dollars, that is simply not accurate. The coin has to meet the right combination of grade, strike, full steps quality, preservation, and collector demand. Now let's talk about rare errors, because this is another area where a common date can become genuinely interesting. When examining your 1985 D nickel, look for characteristics such as an off-center strike, clipped planchet, broad strike, die crack, struck through material, unusual doubling, or another abnormality that appears to have occurred during the minting process. But be extremely careful. A scratch is not automatically a doubled die. A dent is not automatically an off-center error. Damage caused after the coin left the mint does not normally carry the same collector premium as a genuine mint error. The strongest error coins are those that can be authenticated as having been created during the manufacturing process. For the 1985 D specifically, the most important practical discovery may not be a spectacular error at all. It may simply be an exceptionally preserved coin with full steps. PCGS describes the 1985 D as scarce in MS66 and higher, and says full steps examples are even scarcer. PCGS also notes that an example appearing to be MS67 or better is worth keeping and potentially considering for professional grading, because truly exceptional pieces are difficult to locate. When grading your own coin, start with the surfaces. Check Jefferson's cheek and jaw for contact marks. Examine the fields around his portrait for scratches and abrasions. Look at the lettering for sharpness and then flip the coin over and inspect Monticello under strong light and magnification. The steps are especially important. If several of those lines are broken or weak, the coin may not qualify for full steps. If the steps are remarkably complete and the rest of the coin has excellent luster with very few marks, you may have something worth investigating further. One more warning. Never clean your potentially valuable Jefferson nickel. Scrubbing, polishing, chemical dipping, or abrasive cleaning can leave permanent hairlines or unnatural surfaces and can seriously reduce collector appeal. If you believe your 1985 D nickel is an unusually high-grade coin, a full-step specimen, or a genuine mint error, protect it in an appropriate holder and consider professional authentication and grading rather than attempting to improve its appearance yourself. So let's put the value story into perspective. A normal circulated 1985 D Jefferson nickel is generally worth only its 5-cent face value. An ordinary uncirculated example may be worth a few dollars depending on grade and market conditions. A high-grade full-step specimen can move into the tens or hundreds of dollars. Documented auction results have reached $504 and $546, and an exceptional PCGS MS67 full steps example has sold for $2,643.75. These are real examples of how dramatically condition and full steps can change the market. That is what makes the 1985 D Jefferson nickel worth examining. The coin itself is not rare because nearly 460 million were produced. The opportunity lies in finding the exceptional survivor hidden among ordinary examples. Check the D mint mark, the condition, the luster, the surfaces, Monticello steps, and any possible mint-made errors. If those details line up, your 5-cent coin may be much more interesting than it first appeared. And if you discover an unusually sharp 1985 D with strong full steps and nearly flawless surfaces, that's when a coin that most people would spend without a second thought could deserve a much closer look from a serious Jefferson nickel collector. Next up, the 1964 D Jefferson nickel is one of the most fascinating 5-cent coins in American numismatic history because it combines two completely different stories in a single coin. On one hand, it is the most heavily produced Jefferson nickel ever made, with an astonishing mintage of more than 1.78 billion coins struck at the Denver Mint. On the other hand, hidden among those billions of nickels are rare varieties, full steps examples, and valuable mint errors that have sold for thousands of dollars at auction. That contrast is what makes the 1964 D Jefferson nickel so exciting for collectors. Most people see an ordinary nickel, but experienced coin hunters know that a small detail can turn a common coin into a major discovery. The coin was designed by Felix Schlag and is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighing exactly 5 grams with a diameter of 21.2 millimeters. The obverse features President Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse shows his famous home, Monticello. Look carefully beside Jefferson's portrait, and you will find the small D mint mark, showing that the coin was produced in Denver. Although billions were struck, many were poorly preserved because they circulated heavily during the nationwide coin shortage of the early 1960s. This means that finding a sharply struck, high-grade example today is much more difficult than the enormous mintage would suggest. Now comes the mystery that surprises many collectors. Why would a coin with nearly 2 billion examples ever become valuable? The answer lies in a tiny area on the reverse of the coin, the steps beneath Monticello. Collectors call this designation full steps, or FS. To earn this designation, the steps of Monticello must appear complete and uninterrupted. Because many 1964 D nickels were weakly struck, coins with sharp full steps are extremely scarce. PCGS notes that only a small number of examples have been certified in the highest full steps grades, making them some of the most desirable modern Jefferson nickels. A normal circulated 1964 D Jefferson nickel is usually worth only 5 to 10 cents, while ordinary uncirculated examples often trade between $1 and $30, depending on grade. However, full steps examples can rise dramatically in value. MS-66 full step specimens have sold for hundreds of dollars, while elite pieces have reached several $1,000s. A remarkable 1964 D MS-67 full steps coin sold for $9,900 at Heritage Auctions in 2025, proving that exceptional quality can transform a common nickel into a major collectible. Even more impressive, A rare MS-66 full steps proof-like example sold for $3,840 in 2022. These auction records show that condition is everything in the world of coin collecting. But full steps are only part of the story. The 1964 D Jefferson nickel is also famous for its mint errors and varieties. One of the most important is the 1964 D repunched mint mark, known as the FS501 variety. During production, the mint mark was punched into the die more than once, leaving a visible second D beneath the main mint mark. This variety is highly sought after, and one example graded MS-66 sold for an incredible $19,800 in 2022. This is one of the strongest reminders that collectors should never ignore small details when examining old nickels. Other valuable errors include double die varieties, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, broad strikes, and coins struck on the wrong planchet. A 1964 D nickel struck on a copper cent planchet sold for more than $500, while examples struck on dime planchets can reach values around $1,000 or more, depending on condition. Some dramatic multiple strike errors have sold for over $1,200, and unusual struck-through errors can also command strong premiums. These mistakes occurred during the minting process and are completely different from ordinary damage caused after the coin entered circulation. When grading a 1964 D Jefferson nickel, collectors pay close attention to Jefferson's cheek, jawline, and the fields around the portrait. Even tiny contact marks can prevent a coin from reaching top grades such as MS-66 or MS-67. The reverse is equally important because the full steps designation can multiply the value many times over. A coin that appears ordinary at first glance may reveal complete Monticello steps under magnification, instantly changing its collector value. This is why experts always recommend using proper lighting and a magnifying glass when searching through old coin jars or bank rolls. There is also one important myth that should be cleared up. Many people believe that all 1964 nickels contain silver because 1964 was the final year for silver dimes and quarters. That is not true. The 1964 D Jefferson nickel contains no silver and is made from the standard copper-nickel alloy. Only the wartime nickels from 1942 to 1945 contained silver. Therefore, the value of a 1964 D nickel comes entirely from its condition, full steps quality, or mint errors, not from precious metal content. If you find a 1964 D Jefferson nickel, check the mint mark carefully, study the steps of Monticello, inspect the surfaces for strong luster, and search for any unusual mint-made errors. Never clean the coin, because cleaning can reduce collector value significantly. Most examples will remain ordinary 5-cent coins, but a tiny percentage may hold far greater value. That is the excitement of coin collecting. Hidden among billions of common nickels are a few extraordinary survivors that continue to surprise collectors decades after they were struck. Next up, the 1976 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark is an interesting coin, because the missing letter does not automatically mean the coin is rare. In fact, for this particular year, the absence of a mint mark is exactly what you should expect on a normal Philadelphia mint circulation strike. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 367,124,000 Jefferson nickels in 1976, and these coins were made from the standard 75% copper and 25% nickel composition. The coin weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters, and has a plain edge. So if you find a 1976 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, don't assume that the missing letter is an error. The real question is whether your coin has something unusual about its condition, strike, variety, or minting process. The reason collectors sometimes become excited when they hear 1976 no mint mark is because of a common misunderstanding about U.S. mint marks. During certain periods, Philadelphia coins did not carry a mint mark, while Denver coins carried a D and San Francisco coins used an S on proof issues. By 1976, a Philadelphia Jefferson nickel without a mint mark was completely normal. The important identification details are therefore the 1976 date, the absence of a mint mark, Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, and Monticello on the reverse. The Jefferson nickel was designed by Felix Schlag, and by 1976 the design had already been circulating for decades. But the bicentennial era gives this particular date an interesting historical background, because Americans were celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Now turn the coin over and focus on Monticello. This is where the story can change dramatically. Look at the horizontal steps leading up to the building. Collectors call exceptionally complete and sharply defined steps full steps, or FS. On a normal circulated 1976 nickel, those steps may be worn, weak, or interrupted by contact marks. But a superbly preserved mint state coin with sharp full steps can be worth substantially more. PCGS lists the 1976 Philadelphia issue as a full steps variety and records an auction result of $4,025 for an MS67 full steps example, sold by Heritage Auctions on February 3, 2010. That is an extraordinary difference from 5 cents, but remember, that record applies to an elite, professionally graded coin, not an ordinary circulated 1976 nickel. So what is a normal 1976 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel worth today? Most circulated examples are worth approximately 5 cents, essentially their face value. Uncirculated examples can be worth more depending on grade, luster, strike quality, and whether they qualify for full steps. Some market references place ordinary uncirculated examples in the low dollar range, while exceptional certified pieces can bring much more. One current value guide reports that most circulated 1976 nickels remain at face value, while higher-grade specimens can range from several dollars into significantly higher amounts. The key lesson is that you should not confuse an advertised asking price with an actual auction result. A seller listing a 1976 no-mint mark nickel for $50, $100, or even more does not prove that collectors are actually paying that amount. The $4,025 auction record is much more useful because it represents a documented completed sale. PCGS identifies the coin as a 1976 5C full steps, MS67, with the Philadelphia Mint listed, and a mintage of 367,124,000. That means the valuable characteristic was not simply no mint mark. It was the extraordinary combination of the correct Philadelphia issue, extremely high grade, and full steps designation. This distinction is extremely important for your video audience because many online claims suggest that any 1976 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark could be worth thousands. That is misleading. The vast majority are common, while the truly valuable examples are exceptional condition coins or genuine errors. Now let's investigate mint errors. If you have a 1976 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel, examine it carefully for an off-center strike, clipped planchet, broad strike, die crack, struck through error, doubled design elements, or another abnormality that clearly occurred during the minting process. An authentic mint error can dramatically increase collector interest. But there is a major warning here. Damage that happened after the coin left the mint is not the same thing as a mint error. Scratches, dents, gouges, flattening, discoloration, or damage caused by machines can make a coin look unusual without making it valuable. Before claiming that your 1976 nickel has a rare error, the unusual feature should be carefully studied, and for potentially valuable pieces, authenticated by a professional grading service. Grading is especially important with the 1976 Jefferson nickel because the difference between an average coin and an elite coin can be enormous. A circulated coin may show wear across Jefferson's cheek and jaw, while an uncirculated coin should retain its original mint luster. Look for contact marks in the fields, especially around Jefferson's portrait. Then flip the coin over and examine Monticello. Are the steps sharp? Are the lines complete? Are there marks crossing the steps? Is the strike strong throughout the building? These tiny details can determine whether a coin has the potential to receive a full steps designation. And when a coin reaches the highest grades, even very small imperfections can make a major difference. One particularly important point is that 1976 Jefferson Nickels are not silver coins. The standard issue is the familiar copper-nickel alloy, containing 75% copper and 25% nickel. So if you find a 1976 nickel that appears silver-colored, don't automatically assume it contains silver. Its color could be caused by environmental exposure, plating, cleaning, or an unusual planchet or minting error. If the coin appears genuinely different in weight, color, or composition, that is when professional examination becomes worthwhile. There is also a fascinating historical detail surrounding the mint mark system. Philadelphia began placing a P mint mark on Jefferson Nickels in 1980, meaning a 1976 Philadelphia nickel normally has no mint mark. This is why the absence of a P on your 1976 coin is not a missing mint mark error. In other words, if someone tells you, your 1976 nickel is rare because it doesn't have a P, be careful. The missing P is normal for this date. The real value hunt should focus on condition, full steps, varieties, and genuine mint errors. For anyone searching old collections, coin jars, inherited coins, or rolls of Jefferson Nickels, the best approach is simple. First, confirm the 1976 date. Second, check that there is no mint mark. Third, inspect the obverse for strong detail and minimal contact marks. Fourth, flip the coin and examine Monticello under magnification. Pay special attention to the steps. Then inspect the entire coin for anything that looks like a genuine mint-made error. If you believe you have an exceptional example, do not clean it. Cleaning can create scratches and unnatural surfaces that may reduce collector value. Preserve the coin in its original condition and consider professional grading if its quality appears extraordinary. The value range of the 1976 no mint mark Jefferson nickel, therefore, has a huge spread. A normal circulated coin can be worth just 5 cents, while ordinary uncirculated examples may bring a few dollars depending on grade. A high-quality full steps coin can move into the tens or hundreds of dollars, and the documented MS-67 full steps auction record of $4,025 shows just how far an elite example can go. The most important detail to remember is this: the missing mint mark itself is not the treasure. On a 1976 Jefferson nickel, no mint mark normally means Philadelphia. The potential treasure is hidden in the coin's condition and details, especially full steps, exceptional mint state preservation, or a genuine mint error. So the next time you find a 1976 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, don't throw it back into your change jar without looking closely. Examine Jefferson's portrait, inspect Monticello, study every step, and check for unusual mint-made characteristics. A coin produced in the hundreds of millions may be common in ordinary condition, but an extraordinary survivor can tell a very different story at auction. Next up, the 1988 D Jefferson nickel was struck at the Denver Mint during the final years of the original Jefferson nickel design era, and the small D mint mark identifies Denver as its place of production. The total mintage was an enormous 663,771,652 coins, making the date common overall. The coin uses the standard Jefferson nickel composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5 grams, measures 21.2 millimeters, and has a plain edge. Designed by Felix Schlag, the Jefferson nickel had already been in production for 50 years by 1988. But despite the huge mintage, there is one feature that can make certain 1988 D nickels dramatically more interesting: the condition of the Monticello steps on the reverse. Start your examination on the obverse. Look at Jefferson's portrait, the date 1988, and the D mint mark. On a normal circulated example, you will usually see scratches, contact marks, and wear from years of use. Such coins are generally worth only their face value or a small premium. Current market references put typical circulated examples around 5 cents, while uncirculated examples can move into the dollar range depending on grade. One current guide estimates the 1988 D Jefferson nickel at roughly 30 cents to $3 and 62 cents or more in uncirculated condition, illustrating how heavily the market depends on preservation. But flip the coin over, because the real treasure hunt begins at Monticello. Look carefully at the horizontal steps beneath the building. Collectors call exceptionally complete steps full steps, commonly abbreviated FS. This tiny detail can make a huge difference. Most 1988 D nickels did not receive the kind of powerful, perfectly centered strike needed to preserve every step. PCGS specifically notes that while the 1988 D is easy to find in circulation, examples in MS65 and higher require much more searching. At MS66 full steps, PCGS describes the coins as extremely difficult to locate, with fewer than 100 examples known, while MS67 full steps pieces are described as almost unheard of. This is where the price story becomes surprising. A regular 1988 D nickel might be worth only a few cents in circulated condition, but an elite full steps example can sell for thousands. PCGS records an auction result of $3,500 for a 1988 D Jefferson nickel graded MS67 full steps, with the sale taking place through eBay in March 2019. PCGS also identifies that MS67 full steps coin as the auction record for the issue. That is an extraordinary difference from the 5-cent face value. But remember, this result applies to a professionally graded MS67 full steps specimen, not an ordinary 1988 D nickel. Another documented example shows just how different prices can be at lower grades. A PCGS-certified 1988 D MS64 Jefferson nickel sold for only $6 at Great Collections in February 2012. Compare that with the $3,500 MS67 full steps record, and you can see why serious collectors examine every detail. The difference isn't the date. The date is exactly the same. The difference is the combination of grade, strike quality, full steps, preservation, certification, and collector demand. The most important area to inspect is therefore the reverse. Use good lighting and, if possible, a magnifying glass. Look at each individual step underneath Monticello. Are the lines complete from one side to the other? Are they interrupted by marks? Does the central area show weakness? Even a small contact mark across the steps can prevent a coin from receiving the full steps designation. This is why a coin can look almost perfect to the naked eye but still fall short of the grade collectors are seeking. On the other hand, if you discover a 1988 D with brilliant original luster, clean surfaces, a strong strike, and exceptionally complete Monticello steps, it deserves much closer attention. Now let's talk about mint errors, because an unusual 1988 D nickel can sometimes become valuable for a completely different reason. When examining the coin, search for genuine mint-made abnormalities such as an off-center strike, clipped planchet, broad strike, struck through error, die crack, die break, or legitimate double design elements. A major error can create a premium far beyond the value of an ordinary coin. But this is also where collectors need to be careful. A scratch isn't automatically a doubled die, a dent isn't automatically a striking error, and damage caused by vending machines or other equipment isn't the same as a mint error. The strongest discoveries are those where the unusual feature can be demonstrated to have occurred during the actual minting process. The D mint mark itself is also worth examining carefully. On a 1988 D Jefferson nickel, the D identifies the Denver Mint. It should not be confused with an error simply because the mint mark looks unusual under magnification. Collectors should compare the coin with authenticated examples before claiming a rare mint mark variety. For modern Jefferson Nickels, condition and full steps are often much more important than simply finding the D mint mark. Grading becomes critical when dealing with a potential high-value 1988 D nickel. A circulated coin with visible wear belongs in a completely different category from a coin graded mint state, or MS. In mint state coins, collectors look for original luster and minimal contact marks. Jefferson's cheek and jaw are especially important on the obverse, while the fields around the portrait should be free of distracting abrasions. On the reverse, the Monticello steps can determine whether the coin has the coveted FS designation. PCGS's population information illustrates how dramatically rarity changes at the top of the grading scale. The 1988 D is common overall, but high-grade full steps examples are much scarcer. There is another important fact that can prevent a costly mistake. The 1988 D Jefferson nickel is not a silver coin. Its standard composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel. The silver-colored appearance comes from its nickel outer composition, not from precious metal content. If you discover a 1988 D nickel with an unusual color, weight, or appearance, don't automatically assume it contains silver. An unusual appearance could be caused by environmental exposure, cleaning, plating, or an actual planchet error. A genuine unusual planchet should be professionally evaluated before assigning a high value. So what should you expect if you find a 1988 D Jefferson nickel today? For a normal circulated coin, think 5 cents. A nicer uncirculated example may bring around $1 or a few dollars, depending on its grade and buyer demand. PCGS auction records show a certified MS64 example selling for $6, while the extraordinary MS67 full steps example reached $3,500. Those two sales demonstrate the enormous gap between ordinary and elite specimens. The most exciting possibility is finding one in your own collection that has never been professionally examined. Imagine discovering a 1988 D nickel with virtually untouched surfaces, strong mint luster, and every Monticello step sharply visible. That is exactly the type of coin that deserves further investigation. Before spending money on grading, however, examine it carefully under magnification and compare the quality against certified examples. If it has significant wear, obvious scratches, or weak steps, professional grading may not make financial sense. But if it appears to be an exceptional high-grade coin with full steps, or a genuine mint error, the potential becomes much more interesting. And whatever you do, don't clean it. Rubbing, polishing, chemicals, or abrasive materials can permanently damage the surfaces and reduce the coin's desirability. Preserve the coin exactly as you found it. For collectors searching rolls, jars, old collections, and pocket change, the 1988 D Jefferson nickel is a perfect reminder that rarity isn't always about a low mintage. Sometimes the rarity is hidden in the grade, strike, full steps, or mint error. With more than 663 million struck, the 1988 D is common in ordinary condition, but the documented $3,500 MS67 full steps auction record proves that one exceptional example can be worth thousands of dollars.